We're continuing now with section 1.4, other effective sampling methods. So we want to look at other ways to sample besides the random sample we saw and simple random sample. There are others. We won't be using them after chapter 1, but we need to recognize them. Okay, so let's look at the definition. So our objectives are to obtain a stratified sample, a systematic sample, and a cluster sample. So before we can learn how to do that, let's find out what the definitions of these three types of samples are, so we'll know what we're looking for. So the first one is a stratified sample. Let's look at the definition of stratified sample. Here we want to separate the population into non-overlapping groups. Those groups are called the strata. You may have heard that from, it's like a geology term, different layers of the soil, different types of layers of the soil is another place where that word is used. So non-overlapping groups called strata, and then obtain a simple random sample from each group. So you start out by breaking up your population into different groups that don't overlap. For example, men and women. Okay, and then from each one of those groups, you make your selection. Or, for example, freshmen, sophomore, juniors, seniors. First, break up your population like that, instead of just all college students. Break them up by class level, and then from each class, you would select. So let's look at our visual example here. Here's our population, and they're all the same color, but they vary in shape. So instead of just working with this population, perhaps there'd be a reason we'd want to break it up into shapes. Then we come back and randomly select some from each strata. So we would select some from the hearts, some from the triangles, some from the stars. And the number selected from each strata can be the same, or they may be a representative proportion. So if there's only 10% of the classes were seniors, then perhaps your sample would only have 10% seniors, and likewise here for your shapes. So it doesn't mean you have to select the same number from each group. You may have a reason to select a different number from each group. Okay, that is stratified sampling. Break it up into something they have in common and there's no overlap, and then randomly select some from each. Let's look now at systematic. In systematic sampling, we randomly choose a starting point by selecting a random number between 1 and k, whatever, and you have to determine what that k is going to be, and then select every kth subject in the population. So let's look at this diagram. Here's our population. It was just a bunch of red dots, but we decided that we were going to go with every third subject, so we select every third in the population. Okay, this might be an inspection on a production line where you start at the 23rd widget, and then every 23 you pull it off and inspect it, something like that. Okay, that's stratified and systematic. We'll continue with the rest of this in the next video.